here with 24/7 Sports social distance conversation, and I'm happy to welcome in ESPN college football expert and a good friend of mine, Bill Connelly. Bill, long time no see, but I guess we can't with the social distancing guidelines.
Well, we're kind of used to this. We're used to working together and never being within 1,000 miles of each other anyway. So, that's I would say our jobs have changed less than other people's jobs.
This is true. This is true. Although now we have the added element of kids staying home at the workspace. I have some new work from home colleague. Oh, yeah, man.
That's been the homeschooling stuff really kicked in for us this week, and that's been exhausting. Among everything else, it's just tiring to keep up the schedules and everything. But anyway.
Bill, you do great work during the season, but you've always sort of been king of the off season with your preview series. And I think just because it allows you more time to dig into stuff. How has the layoff impacted you?
Well, it has been interesting. I mean, we had a bunch of you kind of have to look at preview content in a slightly different way now because we don't know exactly what we're previewing. But it's been kind of funny too. Like I've been helping on the soccer side a little bit, providing some content there. And it's funny because soccer, there's never an off season. Nobody has any clue how to handle downtime because there just isn't any in the schedule. You got the international tournaments and all this other stuff. And so it's been kind of enlightening realizing that college football, we're used to having 9 months with nothing specific to talk about. And it hasn't really affected us all that much beyond, not knowing as much about position battles and stuff like that. You can't really lean on that information. There aren't any post-spring depth charts when there, wasn't a spring. But I would say, for the most part, it hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot about how I look at things.
So your articles are still coming out on ESPN.com, and you're also putting some really awesome stuff out on Twitter where you're continuing your team preview series. First of all, you should follow Bill on Twitter. Absolutely. But second, is there a team out there when you went through their preview and it made you say, oh, whoa, but this is unexpected, maybe in a good way. And then on the other side, sort of maybe one that after reviewing it, you said, I kind of have a little more concerns than I thought I might with this one.
Yeah, I mean, so basically what I've been doing is on Twitter doing about a team a day. I'm falling behind here and there, but about a team a day, basically counting from 130 up in my SP Plus projections. So at this point, I'm in like the around 90th or something like that. So I'm really the negative surprises are much higher than the positive surprises right now. But one of the teams that I hadn't really thought about that have already popped up on the countdown is Syracuse. Definitely a disappointing year. And then they lose a lot of pieces in the secondary, a lot of pieces in the receiving core, I think. And that program's in a weird spot. The offense has never really gotten going with Dino Babers, which was the whole calling card, but it seemed like they were going to have a really good defense last year. The secondary got blown up by injuries, and so now it's kind of hard to know what to expect, but that offense fell apart. Tommy DeVito was supposed to be a really, really, really strong quarterback prospect, but he took too many sacks. He didn't have receivers open necessarily. His line was charitably, we'll say, porous. And it was just kind of a mess all around. So that, they're in a weird spot this year. He earned a ton of goodwill, obviously, and deservedly so. But he also kind of benefited from a really weak ACC there in 2018. And then last year he kind of contributed to that weakness a little bit. And so I don't really know what to expect from them moving forward.
They're certainly interesting in a sort of like the bottom half of the Atlantic Division. Like NC State is sort of in a pivotal year after a bit of a down year last year. Wake Forest did lose a lot off last year's team. I know they have some nice pieces coming back. It'll be interesting to see kind of it's sort of Clemson and everyone else, but in my mind, it's sort of Clemson, probably Florida State, Louisville, although I think without a spring practice there, that might, for Florida State some, whereas Louisville has a lot of continuity returning.
Yeah.
And then sort of the rest of that division, I guess we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Mike Norvell hire was great. He's been phenomenal as both an OC and then as head coach at Memphis. I think he's going to do a really good job. It's just, it's without spring practice, it's hard to get any sort of read on how long it's going to take him to figure things out. I think he could be a quick start kind of guy, but yeah, it's hard to predict that, especially with no spring ball for anybody.
So on the sort of like believer rating scale, is there a team that you've gone over so far that made you think, wow, I like these guys a lot more post-review than I did, pre-review?
I still need to kind of walk through certain teams near the top, really, like a Michigan. When I looked back at them a little bit, their offense the last half of the year was kind of top 10, top 15 level offense, and they were so rickety that first half of the season that we kind of all wrote them off, to the point where when they were gaining yards on Alabama, everybody was using it as a sign that Alabama's defense was bad, when in actuality that's what they'd been doing to pretty much everybody. They got their butts kicked by Ohio State because their defense got torched again, but their offense did pretty well. So if we think that Shea Patterson wasn't a major reason for that, which his career ended with it possible to have every single possible range of opinions about him, good and bad. So I can't really tell. But if the successor, whoever that ends up being, ends up doing a decent job, they're going to have a good run game. They've got most of their receiving core back. Kind of seems like they might have a top 10 potential team if the defense holds steady. But all the reasons to not believe that they're a top 10 team, like we've seen constantly over the last couple of years, we've seen the kind of things, the rakes that they step on, and I can't guarantee that that's not going to happen again. So I'm not all the way around on Michigan, but I could talk myself into Michigan by the end of the offseason, because that's what we do. We always talk ourselves into Michigan.
That's an interesting one. In my head, I kind of have them down as 2019 was a missed opportunity for them, given how the schedule fell. And I don't know what to think of either Joe Milton or McCaffrey. We've seen a little more of McCaffrey. Milton, in my mind, just watching him as a recruit, it's hard for me to remember a guy who had more ridiculous, amazing throws and then more like, what the heck was that type throws. And so we'll get to see how much Jim Harbaugh's been able to coach it out of him, along with their new coordinator last year. So that's interesting. Obviously, like you mentioned, we don't have post-spring depth charts this year.
Right. Not that Michigan ever gave us one, but still.
Right. Oh, that's true. It's helped them on the field quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, they are, it is kind of, McCaffrey seems like a reasonably steady guy, but it's hard to get a read on his upside. Milton's upside just jumps out at you, but you don't know if he's going to be consistent at any point. So that was going to be a really interesting race, and now we'll see what happens.
So, Bill, let's go ahead and exclude the year one head coaches at new schools, because that's the obvious answer to this question, which is, are there some programs out there that you think might really struggle or just be hampered a little bit because of the lack of spring and summer togetherness and practice? And then maybe on the flip side, who have you isolated so far? And I know you do your returning production ratings, which might factor into this answer. Who have you isolated that they might actually be pretty well set up to not have a spring?
It's funny, like Texas would be a good answer for that, because they return a lot of production, but then of course their coordinator issues, the fact that they have two new ones, makes things a little weird in that regard. But it's funny how antisocial my numbers are sometimes. I know, like, usually when you're a numbers guy, you're pretty antisocial to begin with, and I'm sure I qualify in some ways, but the numbers do a lot of that themselves, in that they love both Texas and Nebraska this year. And Tennessee even. All of them are in the top 25, and we know, USC's up there too, and we know it's not because of USC's recruiting that they're up there. They're up there because of actual continuity and returning production and proven pieces. So it is kind of a weird, all the teams that SP Plus really kind of tamped down the expectations for last year, Texas and Nebraska, to a certain degree Tennessee, loves them all this year. And I think Nebraska in particular is an interesting one, because they have decent continuity. That defense, still don't trust that defense for obvious reasons, but the offense should have the pieces to really kind of click this year. So basically I'm hopping onto the bandwagon the year after everybody jumped off.
That's sort of, I know in fantasy football, we call that a post-hype sleeper.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Texas applies too, to be honest. They got so much hype last year, and just behind the scenes, Bill and I would be in G-Chat and be like, I don't hate Texas, but I don't see them as like a top 15 type team. Yeah. Like, it seemed like they lost so much off that 18 squad.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll throw out to you. LSU. So just had probably the best offense in history of college football. Yeah. I mean, by the numbers, I'm not even sure it's that close. They lose, 16 or 17 starters, both coordinators. Well, Steve Ensmith is back, but Joe Brady's gone to the Panthers. Right. We know Dave Aranda is now the head coach at Baylor. To me, that's a team that could have really used a spring practice.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Georgia. I wrote a piece about Georgia a few weeks ago, like right before everything started getting canceled. So I don't even know if anybody read it, but it was the same idea where you have this new coordinator and new quarterback combination where you're like, okay, well this could be interesting. I'm wondering what'll happen, and now we have no idea. It's that way times two with LSU because they do his replacement hires. I don't know if I like or not. I guess they could be fine. I mean, Bo Pelini's been around the block, obviously, and he's had plenty of successes on his resume. Scott Linehan, he's one of those guys who was in the NFL so long that he succeeded a lot and failed a lot, and so you tend to only remember the failures in that case. But I mean, the dude knows stuff. He knows he can bring certain NFL knowledge to the playbook that already exists. So in theory, that could work. I don't love or completely trust either hire, and I was really curious how that was all going to work with Miles Brennan, and now we have no idea. So they are a very interesting one. I guess I can't really be worried about the defense because of the talent, and the offense is going to have a high floor because of Jamar Chase and the guys they still have. But yeah, there's just a boatload of turnover there, and it's hard to get you can't really trust that they're going to be just as good just because they have the same playbook and a few of the same guys.
I was looking at one of those offshore websites that we're not going to discuss because of our employer relationships, but they had LSU at 11-4 to win the SEC and A&M at 16-1.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, maybe if everybody had a spring practice and Miles Brennan comes out looking great and they're feeling good about the coordinators, but without spring practice, I don't know if I can justify 16-1 versus 11-4.
Yeah, that's a lot of trust in Miles Brennan, and he looked fine in small sample cleanup time and whatnot, but that's a lot of trust to put into him. A&M though, like if we're talking about teams with poor continuity, maybe struggling, A&M has all the continuity in the world, and really kind of a double dip of it because they had a ton of continuity last year too, outside of the skill core, basically, I think, and now they have even more. So they're another team that. People started to hop on the bandwagon a little bit last year, although the schedule, I think, helped to tamp expectations down. Now the expectations are going to ramp up, and that's a really weird place when you have expectations in the SEC West and your name isn't Alabama or LSU. It's hard to figure out where the glass ceiling is there, whether they're absolutely capable of a top 10 performance, but that could mean 9-3 or even 8-4 if they're only top 15, and it's hard to figure out exactly what they're capable of.
Exactly. I had to critique a top 25 the other day, and I said, well, this is totally dependent on, are we doing a top 25 based on a power rating?
Right.
Because I'm having A&M in for sure, and probably top 15, top 10 range if we're doing power rating, maybe even inside the top 10 if you really like them. If we're doing a predict how the final polls will look,
right,
might be a little bit different because of that schedule, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Here's something for you, Bill. Look, a little bit of a curveball. We know you can throw down in the kitchen. We know you like to toss one back once in a while. You got – I probably sounded bad.
Once in a while. As long as you said that.
Once in a while.
Say repeatedly or all day, so it's okay.
Right. You introduced me to Florida Cognac, right? Oh. Do you have anything that you're sipping on recently or anything you've been throwing down in the kitchen?
Yeah. So we both got to go to Costa Rica a year ago, and I got to share the gospel of aged rum to a group of people, and it's the most amazing thing. Let's see, what have I been focusing on? A guy got me some like hardcore backwoods Missouri hooch a while back, like 130 proof kind of stuff. That's something, but I can't say I'm partaking, nonstop in that. I got into the Irish for St. Patrick's Day. I got a little experimental there. You can there's one that's pretty affordable called Writer's Tears, which is just hilarious, but also very good. Let's see, and the Rise. That's one. If you haven't, Angel's Envy makes an awesome rye. Woodford makes an awesome rye. Basically, anybody who makes a good bourbon makes an awesome rye now, apparently. So that's a good one. We'll go with that.
Awesome. Bill, appreciate you being on the 24/7 Sports Social Distance.
Absolutely.